which was fine, right? It was good, and everything we use now is very similar material, like at the core of its functionality. But the turning point for me was during quarantine. Like everyone else, I was at home. My office was closed, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to come out of this better rather than worse? And so I went mad scientist mode and just found a way to shrink everything. Rick Moranis style, right?
And so I shrunk the Pelican case.
Yeah. So now, as far as the vision therapy portion, it's in a laptop case, all of it. And so the gear before, it wasn't gigantic, but the guys couldn't travel with it, right? So that reduced my athletes' ability to have higher training frequency, especially at higher levels. They're on the bus, they're in the hotel. Whereas now it fits in your backpack. Right. And so our program, we call it the Pro Package. It's a carbon copy of what we do with our NHL players, which is the kitchen sink, if you will. I sat down during that time. I'm like, someone said, if you were going to tell me like everything, the best of everything I could do, what would it include? And so it's everything you need for the vision therapy portion, where we're going to get you to the elite levels of all those visual skills. You get to keep the equipment. So from a maintenance standpoint, you have everything you need. If you're concussed and you need to retrain some things, you have what you need. And then we also include a full eye hand kit, where it's a variety of training balls, swivel goggles, strobe glasses, like the works. And
that would be the one that I spotted, and I am going to name drop because I've already name dropped him in an NHL.com article. You don't like to do it, but I will, because I walked into the locker room and hanging in his locker stall, Jake Ottinger, is the symbol I recognize, the eyeball with the big flexing biceps coming out of it. And I'm like, I know that symbol. You've been working with Josh. And so he brought out the bag and showed me some of the goodies.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I bought the company from its creator, a wonderful man named Jim Nelson, who left a steady job and pension to pursue this because he knew it was right. And his primary focus was kids that needed help with reading. And he retired, and I didn't want to see the program go away because I saw how it had helped so many people. And I continued working with goalies. And at that time, there really wasn't, like, I knew how to juggle, but that was about it. And so I had this big crop of like the top Minnesota high school kids, and I just invited them in, like, hey, there's this turf here. Let's just have some fun. And where it kind of started was it had always perplexed me. You know, they tell us to throw a ball off the wall and catch it, which is a fine thing to do. But now I'm tracking something that's going from 7 feet down to 4 feet, going downward. Pucks go from the ground up. And so it started, I took those giant triangular plyo boxes, turned them on their back, and we threw off those to create an upward trajectory. And now we,
so it's more like you would see as a goalie, pucks coming off the
edge. Yeah. And so it's really fun looking back at, our body of drills is just huge now. And so now that's something that is just constantly evolving and growing over the years. And it's just, and I've got drills that my rule is, if a goalie comes up with an idea that we didn't come up with, they get to name it, kind of like if you discover a new bug. And so,
or star.
Yeah. And so, Henry's hallway is my favorite. A kid at a camp named Henry, he said, you have any drills to do when they're in a hallway, like 2 walls? And I'm like, it's a great question. And so, it's hard. Henry's hallway is hard, but, it's named after Henry. And so, so with going back to the remote training, we will be the goalie's private eye hand coach for a year. And so wherever they are, if they can barely do the foundations, we'll start there. If they're already a stud, we will show them, hey man, hey goalie, there's a lot you can do beyond this. Right. And look around, you see the pictures around the wall. There's not one on this wall that we can't challenge. And when I say that, it's not just like for the sake of making something super hard. It's still appropriate and goaltender aimed. It's just, we've worked on it for a decade.
And is that important? Like, I'm going to digress a little bit. The importance of, because, goalies typically start with juggling. Like that's a common thing. Goalies juggle, right?
Yeah.
But they can get to a point where they're just juggling and they're not challenging anything? Is it important to sort of constantly be moving forward?
Yes. And
why?
Yeah. So I tell people I kind of swung on a pendulum in terms like juggling it's something that we've all been told, like you're a goalie, you should juggle. You should, right? And at first I worked on that with kids just because we were supposed to. And then I stepped back like, well, is it that important? Because I met and worked with a goalie, Stanley Cup winner, didn't know how to juggle. And I'm like, okay, well, it's, so, okay, is it really that important? But then I swung back and I found this study that was done in Oxford that showed they took a group of people that learned to juggle. And they found it actually created new brain matter in the area of the brain that's responsible for catching things out of the air, which is, I'd say, very important and appropriate.
Feels like a goalie thing.
Yeah.
Feels like the job description.
And then kept digging, and they commented that, some got better than others. And once the participants got it, there was not a significant difference in terms of the mastery. It was the learning process that created this change. And so my philosophy now, having explored both sides, which I think is important, is, I agree. It's not a prerequisite or a requirement to know how to juggle, but it opens a lot of doors to other drills. And so my approach is once you master something, we move on, and it's not necessarily learning a new drill, it's tweaking it. Right. So one example is, I get goalies that can juggle and do math problems at the same time. Right.
I was told there'd be no math, Josh.
Not for you, for them, but so we'll take one of the three balls and replace it with a ball that has numbers on it. And now every time that ball passes their eyes, they have to call out which number they see. Right. And if they can do that, we go 2 numbered balls and 1 normal ball. And, then we'll have them switch back and forth where the number ball passes, you have to say the number, then I'm standing 15 feet away, holding up some fingers. You have to say how many fingers I'm holding up and then switch back in time to say the next numbered ball. And so, it's
a lot.
Brain hurts thinking about it. Right. And so what I try to do is keep my goalie's visual system in a constant state of improvement, right? Where, especially, every juggling drill is essentially pattern based. And so it can become very muscle memory,
right?
Heavy. And, I've got goalies who can juggle off the wall way faster than I can, just machine guns, right?
Yeah.
Something as simple as I have them move back a foot because they always stand at the same place, right? And they can't do it because the timing's off. And it's like, okay, you mastered that exact distance, but can you adapt, right? So it doesn't have
where the at least the study says that's where we start building the brain matter as well.
Yeah.
If you're adapting and learning, not getting stagnant.
Yeah. And, I think of goaltending, right? So the puck doesn't always go where we expect. And sometimes we have to make these awkward last second shifts in where our limbs are going, right? And so things like, shifting the pattern where I'm not just juggling the air, I'm not just juggling the wall, where I'm going, the first 2 go off the wall and the third one goes in the air. I mean, I've got some studs right now that have come in that are just starting to train with us. And the 4 foundational, 3 ball drills, they're as good as it gets. Like they could do it for, ongoing. They could do it for 20 minutes.
Right.
We try one of those and their F-bombs are being dropped, right? They're frustrated. Which is great. And I always, I let them be frustrated, but then my message is always like, embrace this, embrace how hard that is, because it's been years since you were challenged. And
this is probably how hard it was when you started juggling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And
we actually, and I'm going to have to now, we're following up with her, but Julia Elaine, who does sports psychology and training, when we were talking, we're going to have her on the podcast. She was at the USA Hockey thing. I talked to her about juggling a little bit, and seeing that frustration and how the athlete reacts to it is part of her process. And when, in terms of learning the juggling.
Yes.
I love that when she said that. And I can't wait to dig into it with her. So shot across the bow, Julia, it's coming.
Yeah.
Not across the bow, but you just a heads up, it's coming.
I got one of my NHL guys. He got so mad during a drill. He kicked a racquetball and it hit me right in the throat. And he was instantly apologetic, but I was like, it's all right. You got to have a little fire. Like if you don't, And yeah, I mean, like she's the expert. Like, maybe that's not what she wants to see, but at least this example, the dude is
controlling
pretty
it, managing it, and moving forward, I would imagine, is the lesson. Again, we'll get into it with her, but
yeah. It's but yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, I see all types of personalities where, I mean, for me, it always comes back to, and I see the kids who are quick to quit or say this is dumb, right? Like that's telling.
Right.
No, this is hard and you're not willing to work through it. Very, very different. Because the guy that kicked the ball, he also like his hat goes backwards, right? Like over the top style, and he stays till he gets it. It's just, I would
competitive. There's a competitive nature that kicks in. We want that.
And I knew that's what it was.
Yeah.
Cause I have videos. I had a contest going with one of my pro guys. He asked about 4-ball juggling. And I said, you know what? I've honestly never tried it. I said, let's race. First one to get it next time you're in town playing the Wild, we'll buy the other one a Coke. Right. And so I was in here, I had Iron Maiden going because the beat was really like the rhythm that I wanted, just blasting after hours. I'm getting text from my wife, where are you? And I'm like,
4-ball juggling, darn it.
And I got to 9 and I dropped one. I punched the racquetball. It bounced off the wall over my head, knocked one of these pictures down, glass shattered everywhere. Right. Cause it just like, it lies dormant in me as my competitive career is behind me, but I hate to lose. And so that's where, like, in that moment when he kicked the ball, I did the same thing, and it wasn't, and I continued to stay, and I did win. I got it first, but it,
Coke tasted great.
Oh, it did. But it's, yeah, I mean, I digress, but I like competitors.
So juggling is obviously one that becomes sort of a, not staple, but just something we associate with goaltending.
Yes.
Other ball drills and the important role that they can play in sort of continuing to evolve and adapt your eye-hand coordination, or eye-hand system, your visual. I don't even know. Is that the right phrase? Do we use the right phrase when we always say eye-hand coordination?
Yeah, eye-hand is more appropriate.
It used to be hand-eye, right? I think maybe I've learned that.
And I'll be honest, I'm still actively changing my nomenclature. It's and I
to eye-hand.
Yeah.
See, so you've taught me well. I think that was years ago. You telling me it should be eye-hand, so I inherently say it.
It might, there are a couple of people that I've spoken with who are also, experts in the field, and I respect the heck out of the two guys I talked to, and so I'm like, well, I better say it right. And I catch myself like sometimes I still use hand-eye. I think it's just more universally recognized, right. But it starts with the eye, and then your hand moves. Hence the importance of the, like. Zoolander, right? Are you an actor / model or a model / actor? Right? To them, it matters, right?
Yeah. So we progressed from juggling. We've seen the different. We saw some. You had one with Jeremy Swayman where we caught it on Twitter, shared it with you, came up with examples. We found one recently with Jake that we're going to put on the site. Like those types of drills, progressions through them.
Yeah.
Those are all things you do here in person with your pro athletes and your athletes at every level.
Yeah.
But also you have an online library that people can tap into if they want to get a membership and walk through this process with you.
Yeah. So that's a new offering from us where a book of what we do is in this office, and it's deeply important to me, especially, the reading kids. And hockey wise, most of the people that have access to us are local. But I, just as a lifelong hockey person, I also want to contribute to a wider, aspect. Right. And it's not everyone's in a position to do our full pro package program.
Right. Not everyone's as lucky as me and gets to fly to Minnesota in the middle.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and so the eye-hand training is something that, two things. One is to no fault of their own. Most goalies are just very limited in the number of drills that they've been taught. And I was in the same boat, summer camp. It's just kind of it's like learn to juggle and throw a ball off the